Hello there. In this video, we are going to cover the geopolitics of U.S. tariffs and try to answer the question, what if tariffs are no longer just about protecting jobs or fixing trade deficits? What if they become tools of geopolitical power? That is the central story behind the U.S. Liberation Day tariffs, announced on the 2nd of April, 2025. Let's start by looking at trade as a form of power, transitioning from the sphere of mere economics to geopolitics. The Liberation Day tariffs are more than a trade policy. They mark a shift from a rule-based trade order towards a power-based one, where tariffs are used to pressure rivals, discipline allies, and reshape the global economy. Tariffs should be understood as instruments of economic statecraft. They are not just taxes on imports, they are political tools used to alter bargaining power, redirect supply chains, and serve foreign policy goals. This is especially clear in the U.S. approach to China. The tariffs aim to contain China's rise in industries like semiconductors, electric vehicles, and artificial intelligence. So the real issue was never only trade, it was technological leadership, industrial power, and strategic rivalry. In short, U.S. tariffs are part of the broader U.S. national security strategy. But did they achieve their stated goals? According to our report, not really. The U.S. trade deficit did not decline. Instead, it became more volatile. American households face higher costs, real purchasing power has declined, and around 190,000 blue-collar jobs were lost in sectors the policy was supposed to protect. Our report also highlights broader macroeconomic damage, including an estimated 1% reduction in U.S. GDP. Simultaneously, outside the U.S., Liberation Day tariffs reshaped global value chains, but it was not a collapse with globalization, it was a reorganization. In the immediate aftermath, U.S. firms rushed to stockpile imports before tariffs hit, with imports running about 20% above trend levels between January and March 2025. However, as the shock subsided, production shifted outward. Mexico strengthened its role as a manufacturing hub for the U.S. Southeast Asia absorbed redirected production, and Eastern Europe became more important inside European supply networks. So the key takeaway is this: we are not seeing deglobalization, we are seeing fragmentation. But what does this mean for businesses? As we shift from a state perspective to a firm one, the central question becomes, how are companies generally responding to this volatile environment? As just mentioned, it's a directional shift, from efficiency maximization towards resilience maximization, which prioritizes flexibility and the ability to absorb shocks. We identify 5 strategic shifts. 1. Geopolitical risk is now a board-level variable. 2. Pricing has become a strategic function. 3. Supply chain diversification replaces single-source efficiency. 4. Investment discipline means anchoring decisions in long-term structural logic. 5. Firms aren't simply decoupling, they are managing exposure. These 5 shifts help map a business position onto a matrix of 2 underlying dimensions: how exposed a firm is geographically and whether it has the organizational capacity to respond. Our key insight: exposure alone doesn't determine outcomes and risks. It's capacity. Resilience is not a posture, it is an architecture you have to build before the crisis arrives. Coming back to a state perspective, the geopolitical consequences go even further. One of our report's strongest findings is that these tariffs did not only target adversaries like China, they also hit U.S. allies. Japan and South Korea, for example, were subjected to very high tariff rates despite being key American security partners. That weakened trust encouraged alternate regional arrangements. Our report points to the deepening of the RCEP in Asia, a EU push for strategic autonomy with the EU-Mercosur agreement, and renewed coordination between the Asian giants China, Japan, and South Korea. In other words, tariffs meant to reinforce U.S. hegemony may actually accelerate the breakdown of a U.S.-centered order towards a multipolar distribution of global power. Then there is also an institutional cost to factor. Our report argues that whilst the World Trade Organization was already weakened, the new tariff regime pushed trade governments even further away from universal rules and towards unilateral pressure, bilateral bargaining, and regional blocs. So the long-term question is no longer whether the old liberal trade order will return exactly as it was. The question is, what kind of new order will replace it? One of reoriented integration or ruthless competition? Our report is clear. Observe how states react to U.S. tariffs. Will they be dictated by standard rule-based trade practices, or will their response be likewise a function of geopolitical instrument and projecting power through trade? What we are seeing is not the end of globalization, but its evolution. The global economy is becoming more fragmented, organized around competing blocs and strategic interests. Trade still connects the world, but it no longer operates under a single shared logic. Tariffs clearly create short-term leverage. They allow governments to pressure rivals, protect industries, and reshape supply chains, but they also come with real costs. Higher prices at home, strained alliances abroad, and increasing pressure on global institutions. So the question is no longer whether tariffs are used, but what kind of system they are gradually produced. In 1990, Edward Ludwig argued that the logic of conflict would increasingly be expressed through the grammar of commerce. Liberation Day has just shown how right he was. The boundary between trade policy and foreign policy has effectively collapsed. For states, this means that every tariff is more than an economic measure. It is simultaneously a commercial instrument, a geopolitical signal, and a statement about the kind of international order they want to build or defend. And for firms, the implication is just as profound. Geopolitical competence is no longer optional. It is becoming as essential as operational efficiency once was.